a bigger problem. In that same year, as I was experiencing my first taste of girl trouble, there was a much larger event unfolding. 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was outside messing around in the street when Susan, my sister, 2 years my senior, came out with a troubled look on her face. "Jim, there might be a nuclear war between us and Russia," she announced in a somber tone. She tried to get me to grasp the seriousness of the matter. My 12-year-old brain was having a hard enough time understanding girls, let alone world politics. She did scare me, though, and I stood around nervously, expecting bombs to start dropping at any moment. Thankfully, they never did. I wasn't the only one who was nervous. Dad got a job building a bomb shelter for a professor and his wife shortly after this event. Many others throughout the country were doing the same thing. Oh, and a footnote on the professor and his wife: they stockpiled the bomb shelter with cans of peas and hominy. A scary basement. We Deckards would have to run down the steps to our dark and dusty basement for protection from a nuclear bomb, or just get under the dining table, which would be about the same amount of protection. Personally, I would prefer the dining table. I could die of fright in the basement. Almost did once. We had a huge coal furnace with a large green hopper that had to be topped off with coal periodically. That was my job. Next to the hopper was the coal room with a small cast iron door high up on the outside wall. The coal truck was able to pull into our driveway next to this door and unload into that room. My part was to shovel the coal into the hopper as needed. When the room was filled to capacity, it was easier. But when there was less and less coal, I had to walk deeper and deeper into the dark, black room, and it became more and more scary. I thought of the creatures that were probably lurking in the corners of that coal room. And for that matter, the whole basement was just begging for evil things to move in. One of the college students who lived upstairs was coming home late one evening. It was dark outside, and he saw a faint light from one of the basement windows next to the coal door. He knew that I was shoveling coal and turned off the motor on his Honda and the light, and then pushed the bike up close to the window. He waited for me to swing around and face the window, and then turned on his headlight. It scared me so much that I dropped the shovel and fled from this evil manifestation. I ran up the steps 2 at a time and crashed through the door into a place where love, joy, and peace abounded. Pat Morris, the student, laughed about it for weeks. He was usually a very nice person. One time he took me for a ride on his Honda to the nearby woods where we hiked around for a while and found some tree toads. That's what we called them. They were about an inch long and they were hanging onto a tree. I decided to take one home with me, so I slipped it into my side pants pocket for the bike ride home. I guess the toad didn't like motorcycles, because by the time we got home, he was dead. My brother David was also given to an occasional prank. He knew that I had recently developed the habit of rushing up the steps and crashing through the door after my coal duties were performed. So one time he was waiting for me to run from the boogeyman and burst into a safe place. As soon as he heard me coming, he bolted the door shut. As I tried to force the door open, it wouldn't budge. I pounded frantically, and he quietly undid the lock and slipped away to his room. The stairway to nowhere. I was not without sin when it came to an occasional pulling of a prank, but it always seemed that I had to pay for it in the end. We had a door in the basement which, when opened, revealed 4 limestone steps going up to nowhere. Nowhere was the crawl space under the back of the house. To me, it was just another scary place to be avoided. My parents decided it was a good, cool place to keep eggs. We bought eggs in a large box containing several dozen. It was cheaper that way. My job was to feed the furnace, and Susan's job was to go get more eggs from the stairway to nowhere. One day I came up with a good plan to frighten my sister. I put together a dummy made with a pair of jeans and a flannel shirt, adding lots of stuffing, and topped it off with a basketball for a head. The door swung inwardly, and I was able with much difficulty to stand the dummy up against the back of the door so it would fall on the victim as they were getting eggs for breakfast. Mom kept some eggs in the refrigerator, so it was several days before she needed more, and she called for Susan, but she was across the street having piano lessons. So she told me to go get some eggs. Well, my brain was preoccupied and just flat out forgot about my trap. I descended into the abyss and made my way to the door to nowhere and swung it open. A dead body fell on top of me and wrapped one arm over my shoulder. Then, to my added horror, its head flew off and bounced across the floor. Somewhere it is written, he who digs a pit will himself fall into it. Colorful characters. Speaking of Jim scaring himself with a dummy, there was a man in town named Jim Boo, spelled B-O-U-G-H, Jim Boo. He was about 35 when he married his sweetheart, Laura Bell, who was 55 years his senior. Jim was a simple-minded man who lived in Pigeon Hill, the poorest area of Bloomington. They made national news in 1958 when they got married. A reporter asked Jim why he would marry a woman 55 years older. His answer was too wise for the young man, because I love her. Laura Bell died in 1969 at the age of 96, still married to Jim Boo. One day a man was in Jim's neighborhood in his delivery truck. He pulled over to the curb and noticed that Jim Boo was walking up the sidewalk toward him. The truck was equipped with an external PA system, and the driver crouched down low in the cab with microphone in hand. When the driver heard Jim's footsteps closing in, he said through the PA, "Hi, Jim." Jim looked this way and that for the man who had greeted him. Finally, he looked at the truck and replied, "Hi, truck."